Hello, and welcome to Ecom Insights, the podcast where we give you data led tips to optimize your profits online.
Hello, welcome to Ecom Insights, listeners. And I'm Matt, and joining me is Rial, my co-host.
Hey, Matt. Good to be back.
And we've got a special guest I'm super pumped about today. Is Rob McGovern. He's our head of paid and director of advertising, and we're going to be talking about the exciting world of the Amazon Marketing Cloud and all things Amazon advertising, no doubt. How's it going, Rob?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Happy to be here.
Well, I think just following the format of the previous episode, Rihanna and I sort of introduced ourselves to the listeners, and I think it's just useful to go over a bit of your background. So let's start off with how long have you been in the wonderful world of Amazon advertising?
Well, the world of advertising in general, I actually started in university. So when I was in uni, I was president of and ran a comedy society. And from that, I actually got a job with Avalon, which are like a big comedy production company. And I flyered for their Edinburgh Fringe. So I went and lived in Edinburgh for a month, was out every day, flyering for like all these big name comedians. So like, they represent people like Russell Brand and Al Murray and like, really big names. So I was out flying for all of those, did really well, and was invited back the next year and sort of led and managed their whole flyering and marketing team for the next year. So been in advertising since during university, which is possibly a bit of an early start.
I was wondering how you were going to connect advertising to comedy clubs, but nicely done there.
Yeah, absolutely. I also ran events and marketed the event, so there's multiple things as well.
So Rob, I know you come from a pretty quantitative background, pretty much as quantitative as they get in terms of physics. So it'd be interesting to hear, mixing in the physics component and how that's helped you develop, I guess, on the advertising side, and what's been useful there, if anything.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people think of marketing as it's kind of moved on from that kind of Mad Men, John Hamm days of like, I'm gonna sell coke, like it's very different. Now digital marketing is all very sort of heavily statistics focused. It's about reaching the right person at the right time with the right message, and there's just reams and reams of data available. And I feel like if you don't have a strong sort of mathematical or scientific backing to that, it's quite easy to get lost unless you're really focusing on what you're doing. So I have a master's in physics, and that gave me a really strong grounding in sort of the scientific method and analysis. And as I mentioned, I did comedy, so I wanted some form of creativity in my life, and digital marketing seemed to be like a perfect blend of that.
But I guess, what was the first thing that drew you to e-commerce advertising then? What was that that light bulb moment for you?
I was at a previous agency which did digital marketing more generally, so Google and Facebook. And just after that had grown and I developed quite a bit, essentially just wanted a new challenge. I went out and I found Amazon, and it's been great. It's it's completely, there's elements of the sort of wider cross-channel and a lot of the same strategies can be applied across, but it's also very different in terms of the levers that you have available to pull, and also the direct relationship that Amazon has with its customers can often lead to very different sets of data being available.
Yeah, and I think that the evolution of Amazon, it stayed relatively the same for a while, meaning sponsored product heavy. But really, an explosion in the last, 2 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, really investing in different ad products. Clearly they've got the infrastructure to do it, plus the data sets to do it, and that's always a good recipe for, in theory at least, good advertising products. So it's good to ride the wave. So I guess moving on to the Amazon Marketing Cloud. First things first, what is the AMC, the Amazon Marketing Cloud? Given my discussions with customers, it's the awareness just doesn't seem to be high, right? And I'm talking pretty sophisticated customers that have been on Amazon 5-7 years, running pretty large Amazon businesses, 20, 30 million, north of that even. And, it's sort of the thing that people say I've kind of heard a little bit about, but don't really understand. So, Rob, could you help everybody please understand what the AMC actually is?
The AMC, as you said, the Amazon Marketing Cloud, is essentially a tool for data measurement. It's a way of pulling in signals from your seller vendor account, your advertising account, and your and your DSP, which is demand side platform advertising account as well. It's a way for you to understand what kind of customers that you're having, how they kind of interlink and the paths that they're taking through your kind of customer buying journey, and it's really just it's a tool. It's a data clean room that you can use to parse through these insights. And pull out some actionable insights from what your customers are doing, which can help instruct your marketing strategy, or even other things like your product strategy, or your I guess it is still marketing, but like your customer communication strategy, things like that, how you want to position yourself. It's a great way to do that with access to data that Amazon doesn't typically give out as easily with direct sort of customer insights. There is a few caveats. For example, there is still data privacy laws that protect customers, so it does need to be like large enough groups. You can't drill down on one individual and follow them around Amazon. I think it needs a minimum 100 to 1,000, depending on the query that you're looking at.
You mentioned data privacy there as a point. I think that is potentially a game changer for Amazon. Amazon Marketing Cloud. Could you just give this some context as to, you mentioned two points. One, about the path to purchase, which, if I'm selling on Shopify with the Google Analytics account and the various tools, you actually have had access to that data for quite a while now. But in context of Amazon, what didn't we have before? How has it changed the game on those 2 points, really?
Like a lot of what it does give you now is things like path to purchase, things like where what different signals that customers were, what different touch points they were getting across your advertising journey. It's something that I'm compared to what was available or what is available still on things like the AMC, on the AMS rather. There's only just this advertising campaign or keyword spent this amount and got this return on a very limited sort of view where you have to trust the attribution that Amazon's giving you. Whereas the AMC allows you to look at far more things. For a couple of examples that I can pull out, did someone touch multiple advertising touch points in their journey? AMC allows you to look at that. Did they look at what was the order in which they looked at them? Were they looking at sponsored products, then a sponsored brand, then a sponsored display, back to sponsored products? You can look at that. Another one is, say that you have a very large purchase, you're a purchase which is a couple of £100. That's not a decision that you make quite quickly. That's a decision that takes a while. In the AMS, in the traditional advertising on Amazon, you can only look at what has influenced them in the past 14 days. In the AMC, you can define these look-back windows. So if you know that it's going to take a lot longer, that someone's going to start having their decision influence, someone's buying a 200, 300, £400 item on Amazon, they're not making that decision in 2 weeks, or, not to speak for everyone, I'm certainly not making that decision in 2 weeks. That's a decision that I take, a couple of months out to go, is this the right object for me? If I'm buying like a high-end laptop or something, I'm not making that decision quickly. I'm browsing, I'm checking, I'm comparing. And I want to know, if I'm advertising that high-end item, I want to know what are people looking at.
Yeah, so I think we'll come back to that a little bit later. I think maybe just taking a bit of a step back, how do you access the Amazon Marketing Cloud? Is this open to anyone who's advertising on Amazon? What sort of conditions need to be met?
So at the moment, you do need to have a DSP account. So it's something that you need to be running a DSP, which is demand-side platform, which is programmatically buying ads. And as long as you are running some activity on there, you should be able to reach out to an Amazon representative who will set up a separate AMC instance for you. Where you can connect multiple accounts. So this also can stretch over multiple regions. For example, you can have a single instance that represents your entire EU. For when we set it up personally, I make sure that we set up our campaigns with country identifiers as well, even when they are in different accounts, simply so that we can also break out those insights and restrict them to individual countries, as well as looking at pan-EU patterns as well.
Nice. So I think a related question, who's using the Amazon Marketing Cloud? Is it a sort of daily tool? Is it a monthly tool? Is it are you yourself using it, or is it the data team? Because one of the things that I was maybe a little bit confused by with the go-to-market, this is maybe 18 months ago, 2 years ago with the AMC, it was pretty much built for people who knew how to do elementary coding, right? So like you in order to do anything, you basically had to write SQL and ask very specific questions. They would basically give you the data. It's kind of an infrastructure go-to-market, which is, here's a bunch of data. Here's what the definition is of the data, but it's on you to
you go figure it out.
construct the query, right? Like to ask the right question to get the result. And that's just like very limited, right? Like how many sort of organizations and agencies or whoever it is are in a position really to do that. It's changed a lot, right? And I think it's become a lot more user friendly. So I mean, is it like sort of the data team? Is it? It's interesting to hear like who's using it and I guess how frequently.
I would say that whilst it has become a bit friendlier, I still think there is need for some kind of data team resource for it. Unless you have a partner who is able to run those queries for you and put them into some kind of visualization for you, then you do still need.
And this would be like a bid management platform or something like that. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Unless you have that linked into your AMT instance, in order for you to write any queries, you will need to have at least some understanding of the principles of coding. So like, I guess to kind of be transparent, like I'm not a coder, that's not my background, but as we mentioned at the start, I have done physics, and part of that I did some very rudimentary sort of C++ and or C#.
Right.
Long time ago, over 10 years, can't remember. But I did some kind of visualization tools, and I had to like run the code. So just understand how the code ran rather than being able to build it myself.
Yeah.
And so whilst I've got that kind of background, I can use a lot of they give you example queries, sort of if you want to run a query which pulls this data, then here's what the full query is already built for you. And it sort of gives you comments that tell you, here's where you want to change this bit if you want to look back further, or here's where you put in the campaigns that you want to look at, so on and so forth. So for someone like me who understands how code works but couldn't write it, that's enough for me to be able to build out a few instructional queries and be able to pull things. But I do think you fundamentally do need someone with like SQL experience and SQL experience who can come in and troubleshoot for you. I don't think it's something that someone with zero coding experience would be able to just do straight off.
Yeah, so it sounds like for like 90% or even more, 98% of people who want to use this, they would have to rely on a partner to effectively do this and properly productize it.
It seems a very low. Well, we mentioned the low adoption rate, and certainly at the last unbox in London with Amazon, AMC everyone was talking about it, but you sort of scratch the surface of actually how well are you adopting it and what to extent. It was a bit opaque for these reasons that you need, as a brand. And I'm thinking from like a brand's point of view, okay, I need a DSP seat or a DSP partner. I need a team that's got some rudimentary coding capability, and then I need a data team to understand the vast amount of data that's in Amazon and make sense of it. There's a lot of barriers to adoption, but it seems very valuable. I mean, could you give us some sort of sense about maybe some insights or some of the value that AMC can surface?
Let's talk use cases,
all the
Rob.
effort?
Yeah, absolutely.
Use
So,
cases,
been raring to chat about this one, as you know. You both know me. You both know my favorite use case that I do not stop talking about, which is custom attribution. Is, I think, the biggest one for me. It's really where I think is a lot of the future of where advertising needs to go to be to be really actionable. Which is so the metaphor, the sort of analogy that I like to use on this is to explain why what's existing in the platform, which is last touch, where all of the sales get attributed to the last advertising touch point within those last 14 days, gets all of the credit for the sale. And the analogy that I like to use for this is if you go out for a night, you start off, you have a glass of wine, you have a couple of pints of beer or cider, whichever you want. And then before you go to bed, you think, I'll be sensible. I'll have a large glass of water. That'll help me. In the morning, you wake up, you've got a hangover. Which drink caused the hangover?
Love it.
Amazon's default attribution says the glass of water. That's why you have a hangover, because you drank that glass of water.
There you go.
Because that was the last thing you did before you got your hangover.
Yeah.
We all know that that's not it. It's a mixture of all the things that you did across the full night, right?
Yeah, it could be Real getting the gin and tonics in at one point, I think.
Yeah, exactly, right? We struggle to remember. But that's what AMC allows you to do. So there's custom attribution models where you can look at every single touch point across a journey, or you can weight it to what was the first thing they did and what was the last thing they did. You can weight it according to different options and look at these different things. So that allows you to understand a bit more about what your what is actually causing these things to what's actually causing your customers to buy your products. And we had a client before in the garden tool space, selling sort of 15 million to 20 million a year. And when we did an attribution, and they had very, very little DSP spend, so there wasn't really enough for it to skew anything. But looking at sponsored product, sponsored brand, sponsored display on the AMS platform, we found that when we compared it to some of the custom attribution models we made, the platform over-reported sales to sponsored products by 20 to 30%.
Oh wow, that's a big number.
It's a big jump. So we were able to use that to shift the budgets around. And when we looked at the return that we were getting in some of these sponsored product campaigns, to shuffle that around and to understand that the return was not as great. In fact, there were some very upper funnel activity sponsored display campaigns that we had, which were reporting a 0 return on investment in the platform.
Yeah.
But when we went into AMC and we looked at it over a longer period and looked at it over a custom attribution, they were running profitably. So this was something that you would look at, you would say, no, that's not delivering anything, let's switch that off. But when you look at the impact it's had across multiple other campaigns that are just claiming it for themselves, it's actually delivering, and it's something that should be running.
I think it's important, for the listeners to just reiterate how the marketing funnel works, and AMC allows you to surface these insights. So you can imagine you're running a significant investment in the top of funnel campaign awareness using DSP, for example. And then I've had an instance with a large pet supplement brand that they were looking at the full funnel and going, well, actually the return on the awareness top of the funnel of DSP is not looking great, ones and twos, but look at how well sponsored products are doing, guys. Look at all these sales. So we worked out that DSP had increased the brand search by 155%, because obviously people are seeing the brand, they're seeing video with the brand, they're going, oh, I'll search for X brand, or similar brand, basically. So, your branded search will increase because your awareness has increased. So that's why ANC is really important to show that, because clients will always go to, well, that's the biggest ROAS number, let's put all our budget there, sort of thing. But that's not how the marketing funnel works.
Yeah.
I guess I'm curious, Rob, like how does a discussion with the client go, which is, hey, all these things we've been reporting for, I don't know, the last 6 months, we're now using a tool that gives us better insights, and turns out it's quite a different picture here. That's, I presume, quite a difficult conversation, or not?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, we've been seeding that conversation from the start. Shout out to the absolutely fantastic team that we have here, and they live and breathe advertising.
Compliments will get you everywhere, won't they, Rivian?
But they live and breathe, especially in the advertising team, they completely live and breathe advertising. So they understand everything that you were saying there, Matt, about like the full funnel and understanding. So, for example, that campaign that I mentioned in the previous example that had said 0, we had been running it because we had already seen less definitive, but still impacts there of what it was providing for the kind of awareness and those other pieces, and that it was delivering a great number of impressions and clicks and people coming through. So the team are aware of these things, and they communicate, and they want to be looking at things about they are saying, yes, we understand these ROAS is very high. However, like when you look at it holistically, when you look at what all these things are doing, and then by doing that, we're able to get to the point where we can run these tests with a greater sort of more impressive data set through something like the AMC. And it's not a case of, oh, wow, everything that we were doing before was wrong, but a case of, oh, everything you've been saying was right. And that becomes to be, that's a much nicer conversation to have.
That's true. Although I can envisage cases where that's probably not the case. But so if I understand correctly here, Rob, like you're saying that the using the Amazon Marketing Cloud can actually change the overall ROAS of all the aggregated campaigns or of the accounts, but also will change the individual ones. Let's say associated with whatever the product is, sponsored brand, sponsored display, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a pretty fundamental difference here. This is a key, obviously a key metric around how you gauge efficiency and all those sort of things. And this is a headline number that's actually can materially change via the Amazon Marketing Cloud Insights. So this is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Interesting.
I think we've covered one or two use cases for AMC already about being able to attribute activity all the way through the funnel. Last touch attribution, is that correct? Or where should I put my money? But is any other use cases that are available right now that brands should look at on Amazon Marketing Cloud?
To continue on the vein that I'd already been mentioning about the custom attribution, and then we'll move on to some other ones so that I'm not just banging the same drum.
On this, yes.
Yeah.
To be fair, it's a big deal, right? What you're saying is a big deal.
It is, yeah, definitely.
But there's some other ones as well. So looking at things like path to conversion, so not just sort of attributing it across a full thing, but specifically what groups of campaigns are my customers moving through, which can give you some ideas of what, depending on how you've segmented your campaigns, it can either give you an idea of what campaigns are working really well together. Again, it can give you this idea of how do I shuffle the budget around, but it can also give you an idea of what communication is working for these customers. If a customer is coming in and looking at one product, what do they actually end up going and buying at the end of that journey? Like, what is a customer searching for? If I communicate one of my USPs to this group of customers, how do they then track that along? Are they looking at the same, are my customers very, very neatly defined, and that the ads they click on all have a similar messaging, or are there are overlaps where I'm messaging with one message to one group of customers and then move on and come into another. So,
Right.
So there's also a good thing about like customer profiles.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when you mentioned about customer profiles, I'm just saying that I'm putting my CMO hat on, Chief Marketing Officer, because now they've lent into the podcast. And go, hang on a minute, you can actually isolate what types of customers are interacting with which creative and product.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah. So you can if you've set up your campaigns to do that, if you've set up your campaigns in a way that you are messaging, having specific messaging, then there would be a way to look at what are people clustered into specific messages, or are they more sort of broadly going across, or are there like specific overlaps? You need to make sure that you're setting up your campaigns in a way to support this as in the AMC as well. But absolutely, that's the use case that I can see for it.
That's super powerful for me. I think because the listeners can imagine that you have a billboard that you can change the message on, but you can just show to specific demographics or people at a certain time.
Yeah,
to really work out which message is responding best to male or female, for example, or older demographic, younger demographic.
Yeah, it's definitely one to if you're wanting to do something like that, it's definitely one that I'd be doing with a strong DSP campaign, where it'll be even easier to set up these things. We have a lot of like testing flows that we've developed to run sort of messaging and customer profile tests and things like that. But yeah, AMC allows you to sort of supercharge that and look at it. You can run your main test in the DSP and then look into how is that pulling in through to the AMS. What's the path after we've already created this customer profile in the DSP? What products do they come in and look at when they're on Amazon directly?
I think from a previous podcast, I talked about some of my marketing background, and it just chimes with me that the amount of meetings I had from my marketing campaigns, and you'd have the brand manager or the CMO go, well, let's see, yes, our target audience is 25 to 45-year-old women, and they like high heels and fashion and driving cars and what have you, and they go, and then you realise actually from the data it's some completely different data set. So I had something similar that homeware brand that I mentioned, that was the target demographic was actually 56-year-old women, not 35 to 45.
Yeah,
so actually be able to play that data back.
The number of times I've gone, here's who you think your customer is, and here's who's actually buying. That level of
So that's super powerful.
Yeah, there's some other ones as well. Overlap analysis is a really strong one. Again, more specifically looking at what's the efficiency if they look at one ad versus another ad versus both of those ads over their journey. We had one client who in the sort of hair and beauty sector, and they saw a 500% increase in efficiency with DSP and AMS working combined compared to AMS working by itself. So we saw some absolutely astonishing increase in efficiency just by having that awareness off-site, so that when they got onto Amazon, they were already sort of, already warm to the brand.
So just to make sure I understand this, you're saying someone who was exposed to, let's say, just a particular ad type, one ad type, let's call it sponsored products, for instance, versus somebody who was exposed to both DSP and the sponsored products, that sort of almost incrementality is that the 500% that you're referring to?
So it was that they were 5 times more likely to convert. So their conversion rate went up by 5, or by 6 rather, 500%, 6 times. Yeah.
Really important marketing principle, isn't it? The more a consumer sees a brand, the more likely they are to buy. I think there's various stats out there, like Forrester is saying it's like 27. A consumer has to see a brand 27 times before they consider buying it. Whether that's TV, DSP, whatever. But
the lower end I've heard is 7. But there's also
yes, that's a
that's a very lower end. So I think that might be one
that's the standard one. The 7 times. But the modern consumers, it's in the 20s. I don't know that much, but
it's one of those things as a individual consumer you would just deny, right? You'd be like,
yes,
come on, that's not true. I'm not that. I don't know. affected by these things.
There's a psychological principle. It's called the mere exposure effect, and that's it. Is just the more times you see something, and I think the mere exposure effect is the one where the 7 times comes from, which is like that you've seen it 7 times, and at that point you can start measuring an increase in familiarity. So it might not be enough to make them to buy, which might be where the 27 comes in, but it's enough that 7 times is when they've started elevating it above something they haven't seen 7 times, with no reason other than I've seen it.
Yep.
Like that's it. Our brains are very strange. There was one that I just wanted to call out specifically because I think it's a very important one. We kind of touched on it earlier as well. But one of the ones I think is important is time to conversion. So again, as I was chatting before about like this idea of like high-end products, and like that you wouldn't buy a high-end laptop or a high-end product in 2 weeks' time. You can actually you can use the AMC to look at what kind of gaps in time people are taking to, from their first exposure to any of your advertising. How long does it take for them then to come on and purchase? And the real advantage of that is that it does allow you to start thinking about things like, when I've made when I've made a shift in strategy, how long should I be looking at before I need to call these results? Because if I'm something where like 80-90% of my purchases come within a week, then I need to know that I need to be moving fast. I make a change. If I haven't seen something happen in a week, then have I made the right change? Probably not, right? Whereas if I'm, something that is taking 2 months, if 80% is in 2 months' time, and I make a big change now, and I wait 2 weeks, see nothing has happened, and go, oh, that's failed, let's kill the test. I've just spent 2 weeks on nothing, basically, So I think time to conversion is a really good thing to help you plan out your tests and experiments.
I love that. I think that's such an important point, right? I think so many people, people will use a benchmark of like 2 weeks or something, but I think it's probably, it's tied to the 14-day default attribution period, which is pretty arbitrary. And, the advertising industry way before Amazon even sort of offered ads has been very much like that number's just been bandied around since, Google started almost, right? And it's just very arbitrary. It's probably right for certain large categories, but very wrong for other ones, right? I think this is such an important point, and it ties into the attribution, custom attribution stuff as well, right? Like if you're talking, how long should that window be, and how should we attribute all the different ads that you're seeing? I think you get very, very different pictures of campaign performance and how you should be splitting a budget.
I'm just going to throw in another curveball into that as well. Is like the number of screens that it's the time to attribution, but the number of screens that a consumer may be viewing the product on. I checked my stats here. The average number of screen devices in an American household is over 10. It's 10.37 for those people who are interested. But anyway, my point is, it's like smartwatches, mobiles, laptop, etc. You might be looking at your fancy high value product a few times, going, shouldn't I? And you'll be over multi-screen. So AMC should be able to help you be able to attribute that journey as well. So not only just the time to purchase, but the path to purchase, I guess, is my point.
Yeah, absolutely.
So bringing it back to reporting, it sounds like almost the AMC will tell you a very different story to what the standard reporting would be, right, within the DSP. Are you ignoring the DSP reports, or how is it that you, I guess, work with both of them or reconcile the two different stories?
So no, I think is a sort of fundamental answer. So even with Last Touch, and even with the problems that we've discussed with Last Touch, it still is a useful indicator. And I think the speed at which you need to be moving, like almost take the opposite angle of the last point I made about like running tests for a long enough time to make sure they're running. At the same time, a lot of the time you do need to be moving fast and responding to things when you see things change. And I think that certainly at the moment, I don't think it's sort of feasible to be running your AMC templates and dashboards and reports on the same timeframes that you would be looking at for AMS, for the AMS and the more direct reporting that you get. I think what it is that, to me, you use your AMC reports to give you a more detailed look at sort of conversion factors and things like that. So it's things like when I see a specific campaign has a ROAS, I know that in my head that actually some of that's being diverted elsewhere. So I can't give it quite as much budget as it would imply from what I'm immediately seeing. So there's a certain level of, okay, this number has to be slightly dialed up compared to what I'm seeing, and this number needs to be slightly dialed down compared to what I'm seeing. But it still allows you to move quite quickly. So it's one of those things where we give different targets depending on what the activity is supposed to do, or even looking at different metrics. So if you're looking at something that's completely upper funnel, again, to bring it back to that campaign I saw that wasn't delivering any sales, then it's a case of, okay, that's fine, but we're looking at CPMs, we're looking at CPCs, how many people is this reaching for that budget? Because we know that it's delivering later down the line, even if we can't see it here. So it's about making sure that you understand the purpose of your ads, and the AMC gives you a tool to better hone in those purposes.
And you mentioned a number of metrics, and I guess for some listeners, it's a bit like metric bingo, this podcast, isn't it? Because there's a lot of metrics, there's a lot of different metrics and dots of acronyms, and and I've got the latest one we've heard about is recently ROAS has been thrown around. What is this, and why should brands be interested in it?
So this is brilliant, and it kind of comes back to a lot of the things that we're talking about attribution, about and these conversion factors in terms of how much how much return does this campaign say it's giving versus how much is it really giving. And I've got, so ROAS is incremental return on ad spend. So it's not just about what sales has this ad delivered. It's what sales has this ad delivered that you wouldn't have got already.
That's interesting.
If you'll permit me, I've got another analogy that I like to use for this one as well.
It's better than writing out a formula, Rob, so go for it.
You ready for this, listeners? Here we go.
Right. So imagine that you run a pizza parlor. You run a pizza shop, right? I also want to know, I think I've read this on a blog somewhere. It's just a really great analogy. So apologies that I can't credit the blog where I read this. So congratulations to them. Apologies for using your analogy. But you decide that you want to run some flyering for your pizza parlor. So you hire 2 flyers, flyer 1, flyer 2, and you give them each a stack of flyers, and you decide, I want to be able to track how efficient these flyers have been. So I'm going to give discount code 1 to the first one and discount code 2 to the second one. And then whichever pizzas I see come in with this discount code, I know that flyer has been doing their job and delivering me lots and lots of value. And you wait about 2 weeks, that magical number for testing. And over the 2 weeks, you see that flyer 1 has delivered maybe 90% of your pizza sales now have flyer code 1 on them. Flyer code 2, about 5%, and 5% just haven't bothered with a discount code at all. So you think super clearly, flyer 1 is doing all the work. Absolutely. Let's bin flyer 2. They're not doing anything. Let's keep flyer 1. You wait another 2 weeks, and suddenly all your sales have tanked. What's happened? So you go out and you decide, this time I'm going to look and see what flyer 1 is actually doing. Flyer 1 standing at the door to your pizza parlor and handing a flyer to every single person who walks in. So they've delivered nothing, right? Yeah. That's the equivalent of your absolute upper funnel. Your absolute branded search of very niche core
branded terms.
Someone who's definitely on. Yeah, your absolute branded terms. It's your complete lower funnel for someone who's already going to buy. Whereas flyer 2, they're running around different streets. They're delivering. They're reaching new people and bringing them in. So, in terms of which one had a better incremental ROAS, it's 2, right? They were the one who was delivering additional value. And so, as I said, incremental value can be a lot lower on things like branded terms. So, for example, we did a test recently where we switched off a branded campaign, and we did see sales drop, but not by the full amount that the branded campaign was delivering. So we actually got a bit of a conversion factor on that one to say that for our branded campaigns, if they're not delivering 3 times the ROAS of a generic campaign, you're probably spending too much on your branded campaign.
Right.
Obviously, this will change depending on like industry and the individual campaign and their own branded terms. What I would say is that like with the incremental ROAS, it's not an invitation to switch off all of your branded campaigns just before people go and panic and go, right, let's switch off that. People are going to buy anyway. Amazon has so many ads on its page. Like you will, if you're not running a branded campaign. Other than in some circumstances, you won't be seeing, like when someone loads up the page, it's all just ads until someone scrolls down. But it is worth testing. It's worth looking at it and saying, how much is it actually delivering, and therefore coming up with here's the ROAS that it needs to be above everything else I'm running, because I would have got a lot of those customers anyway.
So is this iROAS something that Amazon Marketing Cloud actually gives you, or is this like using something from the AMC to calculate this?
It's not something that I'm aware of AMC having any specific tools. It's more of a case of understanding your industry and your market and your advertising and what it's doing to be able to measure some of these things. Okay. There are lots of different ways that you can measure these types of things. There's things like charity tests on DSP that you can run to look at iROAS. It's not the best test, but as I mentioned, you can't switch things on and off. And obviously, there's like impacts of like, if you switch something off and your stock disappears the next day, you can't really claim that was what caused it, right? So bear in mind you're not falling into some of these pitfalls, but there's definitely ways that you can run some tests to get ideas of this kind of thing.
And incremental revenue is very sort of close to all of our hearts, to be able to sort of track this across not only Amazon, but I guess you have link out campaigns as well. So could you benchmark incremental ROAS on a consumer site versus Amazon for a brand?
Yeah, there's definitely, like I always think that this is a thing that brands need to look at in terms of what they want their strategy to be. It's Amazon gives you such a wide pool of customers, and I know that a lot of brands do have a lot of fees that they have to pay on Amazon, which they obviously don't need to pay on their own D2C sites. But there is that question of a smaller slice of a bigger pie, basically.
Yeah, no, I think we all have it, don't we? With brands, and when we start advertising with them, and they always raise it as, well, I don't want to do anything that disturbs my D2C customers. I don't want to take them away to Amazon.
Yeah.
Just, you can't go anywhere near them. No pixel, no remarketing. That's it. Basically, is usually the conversation, isn't it? But that's a really important point.
Which is always funny because you can use the pixel and the tag on the website specifically to exclude them. Like it's a way to keep the ads away. But that's another conversation.
But I guess my point is, if you're showing incremental ROAS is higher on the D2C site versus Amazon, then that's going to inform where you want to put your budget and your tactics, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I do think it's worth looking at that to say, like, are you reaching people easier? Like, does Amazon's sort of trust and prime shipping and things like that help that conversion rate and help you get, as I said, it's a smaller slice but of a bigger pie, and that's better for your incremental revenue in that way.
Yep, absolutely, super interesting.
Moving on to, I get more about users or stakeholders. Is the AMC is clearly helpful for people like yourself to help you make some of those bigger decisions around, where to split the budgets and incrementality and things like that. But are there use cases or uses for, let's say, brand owners or CEOs or C-suites as well? Or is it more, I guess, someone who's looking after the ad budget or the day-to-day sort of ad operation side of things?
Yeah, I guess we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier as well, but I guess just to say that, so from my perspective, like, I'm obviously going to come at this from an advertising perspective. That's the lens through which I'm going to be seeing this. But I do definitely think that there is a lot of there's a lot of different people who can use this in different ways. As we discussed before about that idea of like, what are these paths to conversions? What messaging are people reacting to and coming through? Like, that's something that a brand owner can understand, to sort of understand, what is the customer profile that I'm actually going for? So that's something that, like, your brand owner and your brand marketer is going to be interested in. Things like lifetime value is another big thing which will understand. Do we want to change pack sizes? Do we want to, like, go more into a subscription model? Do we want to look at changing do we even want to go in the other direction and offer smaller introductory products and things like that? So so I think it's going to be heavily weighted towards advertising, because it's going to obviously intersect with advertising very directly, but advertising is a way to push the business, and it's a great way to get fast data. And I think everyone in the business from the top to bottom is going to be interested in some form of this data as well.
I think, just marketing hat on again. What really is, the gold nuggets within the world of AMC, and why it is important to C-suite, is actually Amazon has billions of data points about the consumers in the UK, and literally billions. You think about the whole universe across app, web, Twitch, IMDb, Alexa. There's a very, very rich data set there that can be accessed. And from my point of view, my journey was from like Facebook and traditional digital advertising. It's like Facebook thinks it knows what you like and the things that you follow. Amazon knows what you like and knows what you buy, basically. And I think that's the best way to describe it, It
reminds me of a story of a lot of, like, surveys went out for different products. And if you ask, it might be in America, but I think most places, but if you ask most people, what kind of coffee do you like to drink? They'll all say, like, a rich, dark roast. Like that's what I like to drink. If you look at buying data, it's mild all the time. Like, that's what people buy. That's what people want to drink. But you ask them, that's not what they'll say. So I think Facebook is what people say. Amazon's what people do.
Yeah, so I think that, just to bring it into clarity, that's the reason why you're looking at what data set do I trust. My money's on Amazon, because it knows exactly what you bought, basically, rather than what you're portraying yourself as in the world of social is very different. We are different human beings on a podcast, for example, versus actually what we do. But, my point is that real data about your consumers is super powerful, and the whole C-suite should at least lean in and have access to that, because it's such a valuable data set. So I think it's really important.
Rob, just to start closing this out here, we always like to talk about things that have piqued your curiosity lately. So it could be AMC or non-AMC related. More of a much general comment there. What's piqued your curiosity?
So I've been getting into, like, philosophy recently. So I've been watching a lot of sort of philosophy videos on YouTube.
As you do.
As you do. No, it's good, because I was a little bit ill recently, so I haven't been able to go to the gym as much as I'd like to. So I go for a walk, and I just listen to, like, philosophy videos on YouTube as I walk, which is a very relaxing way to spend an evening.
Nice.
You're not gonna write a LinkedIn post linking these two things, right? Advertising and philosophy.
No, I don't think I can. I'm not sure
learned.
Philosophy, comedy, flyers, other mind boggles.
I feel like I should try and get something advertising focused in as something that's got my curiosity.
Well, just for listeners, is just to, if you've got anything that piques your curiosity, then let us know on the hashtag Ecom Insights, or find us out on LinkedIn. Rob McGovern's also on LinkedIn as well. So any questions, fire over his oracle of knowledge, philosophy, stand-up comedy, all sorts of things. You can get in touch.
Yeah. Ask me philosophy and stand-up comedy questions, and then a few advertising after that.
Gaming,
lots of breadth and lots of depth there.
Absolutely.
Please drop us an email as well, ecom.insights@optimizen.co.uk. Any feedback, suggestions, the good, the bad, and the ugly, we want to hear it all.
Yeah, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, listeners, and find us out on all the usual channels, Spotify, etc., to subscribe to future podcasts. And thanks so much, Rob, joined us today. I have a feeling it's not going to be the last time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Great. So until next time, keep thriving, stay curious, and we'll see you soon.